Hello everyone. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. Now let's begin. The smell hit me the second I stepped behind the counter. A warm mix of freshly baked bread and sliced deli meat, layered over the faint, sharp tang of industrial sanitizer we used on every surface. It was the kind of scent that clung to your hair, your skin, your clothes. Something you carried home with you like a second uniform. I barely noticed it anymore. I glanced at the clock. 5:42 p.m. Right on time for the dinner rush. The line stretched from the counter to the front door, a mix of families, tired office workers and teens fresh off the bus. The constant murmur of voices blended with the soft hum of the fridge units and the rhythmic clatter of sandwich knives against cutting boards. It was loud in the way that always made my thoughts feel slightly muffled. "Foot-long Italian BMT on wheat, extra pickles," I called, sliding the wrapped sub down the line. "Got it," Marco shouted back from the register without looking up. He tapped a few buttons and handed off the receipt to a woman already halfway through telling her kid to stop touching everything. There were only 3 of us on shift tonight. Me, Marco, and Jasmine. Marco held down the register while Jasmine and I assembled orders. The rhythm was familiar, even if it always felt like we were 2 steps behind once the line hit the door. I was halfway through layering turkey on a 6-inch when it hit me, that eerie, unmistakable feeling of being watched, like a slow crawl under your skin. I froze for half a second before glancing up, scanning the line. That's when I saw him. He was standing near the back, not talking, not looking around, just watching me. Not in the casual, I'm bored waiting for my sandwich way. No, he was locked in, focused. His gaze didn't waver. I looked away fast, pretending to focus on the sub in front of me. Customers stared sometimes, no big deal. I told myself that, told myself I was imagining things. 5 minutes later I looked again. He was still staring, still unmoving. He looked like he was in his late 30s, maybe early 40s. Gaunt face, hollow cheeks. His dark brown hair was a little messy, like he'd run his hands through it too many times. He wore a plain gray hoodie, hood down, his hands buried deep in the front pocket. But it was his eyes that unsettled me. Wide, unblinking, intense. Like he saw something in me no one else did. Like I was the only person in the room. A shiver crawled up my spine. I dropped my gaze and worked faster. "He's just a customer," I told myself. "He'll order. He'll leave." But 10 minutes passed. Then 15. I never made a sandwich for him. Never heard Marco call his name. I looked up again. He was gone from the line. Relief flared for a second until I spotted him. He hadn't left. He'd moved. Now he was sitting in the far corner of the dining area, still watching me. I swallowed hard and looked back at the counter, wiping crumbs that weren't even there. My hands were clammy. Everything around me sounded normal. Chatter, beeping ovens, clinking trays. But it suddenly felt like the air had thickened, like each breath took effort, like I was underwater. The rush thinned out by 8:30 p.m. Only a few customers remained. Marco cleaned the drink station while Jasmine disappeared into the back to tackle dishes. I stayed at the front, wiping down counters out of habit. I looked up. He was gone. Relief came harder this time, like exhaling after holding your breath too long. Weird, I thought. But it's over now. I took my break in the back room, sitting on a crate with a bottle of water in one hand and my phone in the other. I scrolled through social media, trying to lose myself in meaningless posts, but I kept seeing his face, those hollow cheeks, those eyes. When I returned to the front, he was still gone. The next hour passed without incident. Jasmine clocked out at 9 p.m., leaving Marco and me to close. The routine settled back in, trash bags tied, floors mopped, trays refilled. I was starting to relax again, almost until 9:30. I glanced up, and there he was, outside, standing just beyond the glass, framed by the glow of the red open sign. His face was ghostly in the reflection, drained of color, and his eyes hadn't changed. still wide, still locked on me. My stomach twisted. I couldn't move at first. My hands gripped the counter like it was an anchor, like letting go would mean floating up into panic. Then, adrenaline kicked in. I spun around and rushed to the back. "Marco," I said, breathless, heart hammering. "That guy, from earlier, he's back, outside." Marco looked confused. "Who?" "That guy, the one that was staring all through Rush. He's right out front." I grabbed his arm, tugged him forward. We hurried to the window. I pointed. But the sidewalk was empty, just the dark street, the wind gently rustling a discarded receipt in the parking lot, and the glow of neon on glass. He was gone. The lights flickered slightly as Marco gave me a sideways glance. "You good?" "Yeah," I said, but my voice didn't sound right. Thin, shaky. I looked back at the window. Nothing but our reflections and the empty parking lot beyond. "I swear he was just there," I added, more to myself than to him. Marco shrugged. "Probably some weirdo. We get all kinds in here." I nodded like I agreed, but the knot in my stomach didn't loosen. It stayed tight, coiled deep, refusing to go away. We finished closing without seeing another customer. At exactly 10 p.m., we locked the front doors, shut off the lights, and stepped out into the cool night air. The lot was empty, no sign of movement, just the low hum of the street lamp and the distant chirp of crickets. Marco walked me to my car, throwing out dumb jokes about zombie customers and haunted paninis. I laughed, kind of. My hand still trembled as I unlocked my door. I got in fast, locked the doors immediately, and started the engine. The entire drive home I couldn't stop checking my mirrors. Nothing was there, no cars following, no figures lurking at stoplights. But the feeling didn't leave. That prickle along my neck, that breath held too long kind of unease, it stayed with me all the way home. The next few days I kept waiting for him to come back. Every shift I found myself glancing toward the door every time it chimed, but he never showed. Not the next night, not the one after. A full week went by, and still nothing. I started to think I'd overreacted. Maybe I'd imagined the intensity of his stare. Maybe he had just been some awkward guy hanging around a little too long. It happens. People are weird, right? Then he came back. It was a slow Tuesday night, one of those shifts where you start counting the seconds between customers. I was on register duty that night while Jasmine prepped veggies in the back. The door chimed. I looked up and froze. It was him. He stepped inside like he belonged there, his eyes locking onto mine the second he crossed the threshold. I forced my voice to stay level. "Welcome to the sub-stop. What can I get for you?" His lips twitched, not quite a smile, more like the idea of one. But his eyes, those cold, unwavering eyes, didn't change. "Foot-long turkey," he said. His voice was soft, dry, like it scraped across my skin. I nodded and started ringing it up. "That'll be..." "Not for now," he interrupted. "I'll be back later. Just wanted to say hi." My blood turned to ice. He didn't pay, didn't glance at the menu, just turned and walked out like he hadn't just shattered any illusion of safety I'd built in his absence. After that night, he started showing up after my shifts. Not every night, but enough. Sometimes he stood across the parking lot, barely lit by the flicker of a broken streetlight. Sometimes he sat in a dark car with the engine off, not moving, not leaving, just waiting. And sometimes he was closer, too close. One night I was closing alone. Marco had called in sick, so it was just me, finishing up in silence. I walked out with my keys clutched tight in my hand, every nerve on edge. He was there, standing just a few feet from the door. "Hey," he said softly. That was all. Just one word. I didn't reply, didn't breathe. I turned and bolted back inside, slamming the door and locking it with shaking fingers. He didn't chase me. He didn't even move. He just stood there, watching me through the glass. I called everyone. My manager, Marco, my brother. I refused to leave alone. No way. I sat in the dark lobby, every light off, crouched behind the counter while my phone buzzed in my lap. By the time Marco showed up to pick me up, the man was gone. I don't know what he wanted, if he meant to scare me, or if he was planning something worse. I'll never know, because after that night I never saw him again. Not at the sub-stop, not outside, not anywhere. I never learned his name, never figured out why he watched me, why he picked me. But years later, every time I pass a sandwich shop, any sandwich shop, I still find my eyes drifting to the parking lot, just in case. The flickering hum of the fluorescent subtop sign cast a sickly glow as I pulled into the mostly empty parking lot. The strip mall was quiet, dead really. All the storefronts were dark, their metal gates rolled down tight, except for a small sandwich shop wedged in the far corner. It gave off a warm, inviting light that seemed out of place in the stillness. I glanced at the clock on my dashboard, 8:13 p.m. Not exactly late, but late enough that any dinner crowd had long since cleared out. I parked near the entrance and stepped out into the brisk spring air. It had rained earlier, a soft drizzle that had come and gone without warning, and now the pavement glistened under the amber streetlights, slick and almost black in places. The air still carried that fresh, earthy smell of rain. I took a breath and started walking. There was only one other car in the lot, parked a few spaces down from mine. An old, beat-up sedan with chipped paint and mismatched hubcaps. The kind of car that told stories just by sitting there. From the look of it, it hadn't moved in hours. Inside the sandwich shop, the warmth hit me right away, along with the smell of toasted bread and sliced pickles. The place was empty, save for a single bored-looking employee in a rumpled green uniform. He was hunched over behind the counter, eyes glued to his phone. He barely looked up as I came in. "Hey," he muttered, tucking the phone into his apron and shuffling over to the sandwich station. "Hey," I replied, glancing around at the vacant booths. I ordered quickly. Turkey sub, extra mayo, no onions. He nodded wordlessly and started slapping ingredients onto the bread with the mechanical efficiency of someone who had made the same sandwich 1,000 times. The hum of the soda machine filled the silence, along with the faint buzz of the fluorescent lights overhead, the kind of quiet that makes you feel like you're not supposed to be there. As I reached for a cup to fill at the soda fountain, something outside caught the corner of my eye. A man was walking past the front window. He was tall and thin, with messy hair that stuck out in uneven tufts. His clothes, just a loose t-shirt and sagging sweatpants, looked damp, like he'd been caught in the earlier rain. As he moved past the window, he turned his head slightly. Our eyes met, and then he didn't look away. It wasn't the casual, half-second glance you give a stranger. It lingered, long enough that I felt it, not in my eyes, but in my gut. There was no smile, no nod of acknowledgement, just a stare, expressionless, as if he was trying to memorize my face. Then he walked on. A flicker of unease twisted in my stomach, but I shook it off. People look at people. That's all it was. Maybe he was lost in thought. Maybe I reminded him of someone. Whatever. I filled my cup, grabbed my sandwich, and stepped back outside. The lot was dead silent now. Even the sounds from the main road seemed muted, just the low hum of a distant engine cutting through the quiet. I walked toward my car, my keys already in hand. That's when I heard it. Footsteps, behind me, soft, measured. I didn't turn fully, just glanced back over my shoulder. It was him, the man from the window. He was walking toward me now, not fast, not aggressively, just moving, steady, intentional. His arms hung loose at his sides and his steps were calm, but I could tell he'd changed direction. He wasn't just passing by anymore. A cold knot formed in my chest. I picked up my pace. My hand shook slightly as I unlocked the car. The beep of the doors felt too loud in the stillness. I was reaching for the handle when I heard his voice behind me. "Hey, hold up a sec." I froze. Something in his tone, it was friendly, not threatening. But that made it worse somehow. Like he was trying not to scare me. Like he knew he might. I turned, just a little. He was closer than I expected. Maybe 6 feet away. Too close. No smile on his face. Just that same blank open look. His voice came again, casual, like he was asking the time. "Can you give me a ride?" I stared at him. "What? I just need to get to the gas station," he said, gesturing vaguely down the road. "It's not far. Just down that way." I followed his hand with my eyes. The station he was pointing to was visible from where we stood. Barely a minute's drive, if that. A glowing island of light under the darkening sky. Still, something in me twisted tight. I should have said no. Should have gotten in my car, locked the doors, and driven off. But my brain started rationalizing, trying to quiet the unease pulsing in my chest. "It's close. It's public. It's only a minute. You'll be fine." "I'm kind of in a hurry," I said, forcing a light, polite tone and giving a weak shrug. He didn't budge. "It's real quick," he said again. "I'm meeting a friend there." I hesitated. The air was cold, sharp against my skin. Maybe he really didn't want to walk in the chill. Maybe it was nothing. Just someone down on their luck. Just a guy who needed a lift. Against every better instinct I had, I nodded. "Fine, but just to the gas station." He didn't smile, didn't even change expression much. But he muttered a quiet, "Thanks," and moved around to the passenger side. I got in first, hands clammy on the steering wheel. My drink rattled in the cup holder as I shifted it aside. A subtle click as I unlocked the door. He climbed in, shut the door with a soft thud. Suddenly the car felt smaller, the space tighter. He smelled faintly of sweat and damp clothes. He didn't buckle his seatbelt. I pulled out of the lot. My heart was hammering, too fast for such a short drive. I stared straight ahead, hyper-aware of every sound. The tires on the wet pavement, the hum of the engine, the whisper of his breathing. He said nothing. The gas station loomed ahead, neon signs casting a pale glow over the concrete. As I turned into the lot, I snuck a glance at him. He was staring ahead, unmoving. His face was expressionless, completely unreadable. I pulled into a spot near the back of the lot, close enough to the pumps to stay in the light. "All right," I said, trying for cheerful. "Here you go." He didn't move. Seconds passed. "Hey, I said again, shifting in my seat. "This is it." He turned his head just slightly. His eyes met mine. Dark, flat, unsettling. "This isn't the one." My stomach flipped. "What?" He motioned again, vaguely toward the road. "The other gas station. It's a little further down." "No," I said, sharper than I meant to. "This is where you pointed." He let out a breath through his nose, barely audible. "Nah. The other one." I tightened my grip on the wheel. "I can't go any further," I said, voice firmer now. "This is as far as I'm going." Silence. The air in the car shifted, heavier now, thicker, oppressive. I glanced toward the station. A couple of cars were at the pumps. Inside, behind the glass, a clerk stood lazily behind the counter, completely unaware. I looked back at the man. Something had changed. The slightly awkward, hesitant demeanor he'd worn like a mask was gone. His face was blank now, cold, his posture rigid. He wasn't getting out. My pulse spiked. "I need you to get out," I said, trying to keep my voice even. He didn't move. A creeping electric fear ran up my spine. I didn't understand it, couldn't explain it, but I knew I had to get away from him. Now. Then headlights swept across my rearview mirror, blue and red flaring through the dark. A police cruiser. It pulled into the lot casually, rolling past toward the pumps. The man saw it too. I felt his body shift, tense like a coiled spring. For a second I thought he might do something, say something, lash out. But he didn't. He just opened the door and stepped out. No slam, no rush, just walked away quickly, hands shoved into his hoodie pocket, vanishing around the side of the building like smoke. I didn't wait, didn't breathe. I threw the car into reverse, backed out fast, tires skimming over wet asphalt. And I got the hell out of there. I don't know what he wanted. Maybe he was harmless. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe. But I'll never take that chance again. I got lucky. Really lucky. It had been a long, brutal day. The kind of exhaustion that seeps into your bones, sure, but worse than that was the mental drain. My brain felt wrung out, brittle, like a sponge left in the sun too long. I'd stayed late at the office, later than I ever intended. A last-minute project had spiraled out of control, and before I knew it, the office had emptied, and the clock read past 10 p.m. The highway home stretched ahead of me in an endless ribbon of black, lit only by the occasional oncoming headlights that slid past like ghosts. I lived just far enough outside the city that late-night food options were practically non-existent. Normally, I was smarter about it, packed something from home or grabbed a bite on the way out. But not tonight. I hadn't eaten in hours, and now the hunger clawed at me. Tight, twisting, gnawing. I could almost hear my stomach complain with each passing mile. I scanned both sides of the road as I drove, half hoping something would jump out. A gas station flashed by on the right, neon flickering weakly, but the idea of overpriced chips and hardened hot dogs made my stomach turn more than growl. Then, like a lighthouse on a dead sea, I saw it. The familiar green and yellow glow of a subway sign blinked from a quiet strip just off the road. The sign looked oddly bright against the darkness, almost too vibrant, like it didn't belong there. Still, it was food. Maybe. I wasn't sure if they'd still be open this late, but I figured it was worth checking. Worst case? I drive on, stomach grumbling all the way. I took the exit and rolled into the tiny lot. That's when I noticed something off. There were no cars. Not a single one. I pulled to a stop, frowning. A place still open this late should have had someone around. An employee's car parked out back at the very least. But the lot was dead. And yet, I was almost sure I'd seen movement inside just moments earlier. A flicker in the corner of my eye as I passed, a shadow sliding past the counter. Maybe an employee on break. Maybe they parked elsewhere. Maybe I was just imagining things. I hesitated, then killed the engine. The night air hit me the moment I stepped out. Cool and dry, with that faint desert bite that creeps in after sundown. As I approached the glass door, I half expected to find it locked, but when I reached out and gave it a pull, it swung open without resistance. That was the second strange thing. Most restaurants lock their doors right at closing. If they were still open, someone should have been up front, ready to take an order. But as I stepped inside, I was greeted by nothing. Silence. Not peaceful, not quiet. Silent. The kind of stillness that feels deliberate, like something's holding its breath. Fluorescent lights buzzed softly above, casting that harsh, sterile glow over the booths and tables. The place looked clean. Too clean. Every chair pushed in perfectly, every napkin holder aligned. The smell of bread hung in the air, but stale, like it had been left to sit too long. Something about it felt off, artificial, hollow. "Hello?" I called, my voice cracking the silence like a dropped glass. No response. I waited, shifting uneasily on my feet. The silence didn't just linger, it pressed in. You expect some background noise in a place like this. A fridge humming, the sizzle of equipment, footsteps in the back. But here, nothing. I took a step closer to the counter, heart ticking up just a bit. "Anyone here?" Still nothing. I leaned forward slightly, trying to get a glimpse through the open cutout in the back wall, the one where you'd normally see someone prepping sandwiches or grabbing ingredients from the fridge. I didn't see anyone. Just a narrow hallway fading into shadow. And then, I thought I heard something. A soft sound, barely more than a shuffle, like someone shifting their weight on linoleum. I froze. The lights went out. All at once, no flicker, no warning. Just darkness. Sudden and absolute, swallowing the room whole. For a second, the only light came from the faint amber spill of the street lamps filtering through the front windows, casting long, shaky shadows across the floor. My breath caught. I spun instinctively, eyes straining to adjust, heart thudding loud enough to fill the silence. Then, I saw it. Movement. Behind the counter. A shadow shifted. Someone was back there. Adrenaline spiked, cold and sharp. My brain scrambled to catch up to make sense of it. There hadn't been anyone here. The place had been empty. I was sure of it. I would have heard someone. But now I wasn't alone. A figure stepped forward, barely catching the edge of the streetlight. Tall, male, clothed in dark, heavy fabric that didn't match any kind of uniform. His stance was rigid, unnatural. He stood just past the counter, half in shadow, half in light, unmoving. Silent. Something was deeply wrong. My body knew it before my mind did. Every instinct screamed. The air felt different now, thicker, like it was trying to hold me in place. My legs moved on their own. I turned toward the door. That's when I heard it. Footsteps, quick, deliberate, heavy, slamming out from behind the counter. He was moving. I didn't dare look back. I didn't want to see him. I didn't need to. I could feel it. That awful, primal certainty that something was closing in. My hand shot out, found the door handle. But before I could pull it open, I heard another sound. Worse than the footsteps. A door creaking open from somewhere deeper inside the restaurant. Not the front. Not the one I'd come through. The back. I didn't wait to see who or what was behind it. I yanked the door open and stumbled into the night, lungs dragging in air like I'd been underwater. My heart pounded against my ribs as I hit the pavement, already hearing him, his footsteps pounding just behind me. He was chasing me. I ran, sprinting across the lot, every step a lifetime. My car sat only a few spots away, but in that moment it might as well have been a mile. Somehow my keys were already in my hand. I didn't remember grabbing them. Just one more miracle of fear. I jabbed at the unlock button, heard the click, threw the door open and hurled myself inside. As I slammed it shut, I caught a glimpse. Him, just feet away. He was right there. The dim light outside didn't show much, but I saw enough. Enough to know he wasn't a confused employee. Enough to know that whatever this man was, whatever he wanted, I'd just barely escaped it. My hands trembled as I shoved the key into the ignition. The engine roared to life. He lunged. I didn't wait. My foot smashed the gas pedal, tires screeching as I tore out of the lot, heart jackhammering so hard I thought I might black out. The car fishtailed for a second before gripping the asphalt, and I shot forward, back onto the main road. I couldn't breathe. I glanced into the rearview mirror, half afraid he'd somehow be clinging to the back window. But no, he was just standing there. Still. Watching. Motionless in the parking lot, his shape lit in slices by the flickering green and yellow subway sign. He didn't follow, not physically, but I felt him behind me the whole way home. I didn't stop driving, not until I was miles away, safe behind locked doors, every light in my apartment blazing. I sat there for a long time, staring at the front door, half expecting to hear a knock. I never found out what was going on in that subway. Maybe he was squatting. Maybe he was hiding, waiting for someone, anyone, to walk in. Or maybe he wasn't waiting at all. Maybe he was hunting. And if I'd hesitated, if I'd looked back, if I'd fumbled the keys, if I'd stayed frozen for even 1 second longer, I don't think I'd be here to wonder about it now. It was just another Tuesday. Natalie worked in a bland office tower downtown, one of those beige high-rises tucked between honking traffic, cracked sidewalks, and the occasional food cart when the weather played nice. The job itself wasn't terrible. Boring? Absolutely. But not unbearable. A constant cycle of emails, spreadsheets, meetings that felt like they were designed specifically to waste time. What kept her going was lunch. That sacred midday break. It was her one real breath of air, the moment she could escape her cubicle, stretch her legs, and pretend, even for a few fleeting minutes, that she wasn't just a cog in the corporate machine. She usually brought lunch from home, something cheap and easy she could eat while scrolling her phone. But today felt different. She craved something outside the usual routine, something warm. Subway was just a 5-minute walk down the street. Cheap, fast, familiar. It was a little after noon, peak lunch rush. She knew it would be crowded, but she didn't care. It gave her an excuse to stand still, to drift in thought while everyone else around her bustled and buzzed. Grabbing her purse, she stepped out of the building and into the city's pulse. She passed the overpriced coffee shop she always avoided, where baristas smiled too wide and charged too much. Past the bus stop, where people huddled in coats and half-heard conversations. Past the convenience store that reeked of cigarettes and cheap cologne. The city had this strange way of making her feel small but not lonely, just invisible. And in a weird way, she liked that. As expected, Subway was packed. The line snaked almost to the door. Office workers, construction guys, a teenager in a wrinkled polo, all waiting in slow resignation. The cold burst of AC hit her skin as she walked in, mingling with the warm, yeasty smell of baking bread. Natalie sighed, tugged out her phone, and started scrolling through messages. Nothing urgent, just a group chat blowing up over weekend plans she hadn't committed to. She was half tuned out when her screen lit up, an incoming call, unknown number. She frowned, thumb hovering over the screen. She usually let those go to voicemail. Still, sometimes it was work. IT support, a vendor, someone from a department she barely remembered existed. She hesitated, then let it ring out and slipped the phone back into her coat pocket. A minute later, the phone buzzed again. This time, a text. "I'm in line behind you." Her stomach dropped. She turned instinctively. The dozen or so people behind her looked like any random weekday crowd. A man in his 50s in a navy suit tapped his foot impatiently. Behind him, a young woman in scrubs yawned into her phone. A guy in a hoodie stared up at the menu board with glassy eyes. A construction worker with paint-streaked jeans scrolled through something on his watch. No one looked at her. No one should have known her. She faced forward again, slowly. Her fingers curled tightly around her phone. Her first thought was, it's a prank. It has to be. Some glitch. Someone messing around. But something deeper, something primal, was stirring in her gut. She typed back quickly. "Who is this?" No reply. The line inched forward. When it was finally her turn, she ordered on autopilot. Foot-long turkey on wheat, lettuce, tomato, extra pickles. She paid, grabbed the sandwich with a tight smile, and cast one more glance over her shoulder before stepping back onto the sidewalk. The outside air felt thicker now, busier. The sidewalk had filled with suits, heels, and backpacks moving in every direction, and she hesitated, half expecting to feel eyes on her back or see someone peel away from the crowd to follow. But nothing happened. Still, her phone stayed gripped tightly in her hand the entire walk back. Back at her desk, she told herself to let it go. Just a dumb message. Nothing more. She buried herself in emails, eyes flicking to her phone every few minutes, waiting for a buzz that never came. By 5 o'clock, she felt foolish for still thinking about it. She shut down her computer, grabbed her bag, and headed out. Her car was parked in the 3rd level of the underground garage, a place that always felt off once the sun went down. The lighting was dim, flickering in patches. Every sound, an engine rumble, a slamming door, footsteps, echoed against concrete like it belonged in a bad dream. She walked briskly, keys already in her hand. As she reached her car, her phone buzzed in her pocket. Incoming call. Unknown number. Her breath caught. Her heart was in her throat now. Without thinking, she picked up. Hello? For a moment, just silence. Then a whisper. I'm driving behind you. She spun around so fast she almost lost her footing. Her pulse roared in her ears as she scanned the garage. Aisles of parked cars, empty spaces, flickering lights. But she was alone. Or she seemed alone. The garage echoed with silence. Nothing. Natalie's breath came short and fast as she looked around. Who the hell is this? She snapped into the phone, but there was no answer. Just a soft click. The line went dead. A nervous laugh slipped from her lips, dry and brittle. Okay, this is getting ridiculous, she muttered to herself. Still, her fingers trembled as she climbed into her car and locked the doors. The click of the locks was somehow both reassuring and ominous. Her hands shook on the steering wheel as she started the engine. It's probably a prank, she told herself. Someone being creepy. A random jerk. But the unease in her gut didn't budge. It sat there like a coiled knot as she pulled out of the garage and merged into the evening traffic. The streets were thick with cars, glowing red brake lights stretching endlessly in both directions. Her eyes flicked to the rearview mirror every few seconds. Any one of those vehicles behind her could be him. The thought sent fresh ripples of anxiety through her chest. She didn't go straight home. Couldn't. Instead, she turned off the main road and started weaving through side streets. Left, right, another left. She doubled back twice, took random turns she never usually took. If someone really was following her, they'd have to be mimicking every one of her unpredictable moves. But nothing stood out. No car lingered behind her for more than a turn or two. Eventually, she pulled into a half-full grocery store parking lot. She killed the engine and sat in silence. Nothing. No one. Natalie exhaled a long, shaky breath. Okay, she whispered. Maybe it really was just a joke. A cruel, invasive, deeply unfunny joke, but still, just that. After a few minutes, she drove home. The rest of the night passed without incident. She made a frozen dinner, half-watched a few episodes of a show she didn't remember picking, and tried to convince herself she had overreacted. It worked well enough until 11:45 p.m., when her phone lit up on the nightstand. A new message. Unknown number. You shouldn't have ignored me. Her blood went cold. Every hair on her arm stood on end. She sat frozen in bed, staring at the message until the screen dimmed again. She barely slept. By morning, Natalie had made up her mind. She drove straight to the nearest police station, nerves buzzing, and recounted everything. The strange text at Subway, the call in the garage, the message late at night. The officer behind the desk, mid-40s, thinning hair, tired eyes, listened patiently, nodding as he took notes. When she finished, he leaned back and rubbed his jaw. Do you have any reason to believe someone might be stalking you? He asked. An ex? Anyone from work? Natalie shook her head firmly. No, I swear. This started completely out of nowhere. The officer sighed. Unfortunately, with just a phone number, there's not a lot we can do. It's probably a prank, but I'd still recommend blocking the number and staying aware of your surroundings. If anything else happens, call us. That was it. She left the station feeling more frustrated than comforted. Still, she took the advice. She blocked the number. She updated all her privacy settings. She even set her social media accounts to private just in case. For 2 weeks, nothing happened. Then one evening, she pulled into her driveway, stepped out of her car, and froze. There, sitting neatly on her front doorstep, was a Subway napkin. Natalie stared at it. Her throat tightened. Her fingers felt numb as she picked it up. There was writing on it. You can't block me in real life. Her hands began to shake. No hesitation this time, she grabbed the napkin, jumped back in her car, and drove straight to the police station. This time, they took her seriously. A patrol car was sent to drive by her home periodically that night, and they advised her to stay somewhere else for a few days. She packed a small bag and went to stay with her friend Lauren. The next few days were tense. She barely slept. Every knock, every footstep in the hall, every buzz of her phone made her flinch. Then came Friday night. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number is calling. Her stomach twisted. She had blocked the number. How could it still get through? She didn't answer. A text followed moments later. "I told you, Natalie. You can't block me." That was the last straw. She made up her mind then and there. She was going to take time off work, find a new place, maybe even change her number. Disappear, at least for a while. Just until things calmed down. But before she could follow through on any big changes, the messages stopped. Days passed, then weeks, then months. No more texts, no more calls, no more napkins, nothing. Whoever they were, they had vanished just as suddenly as they'd appeared. To this day, Natalie doesn't know who it was, how they got her number, or why they chose her. She doesn't talk about it much anymore, and she never sets foot in a subway again. The thing about working at Subway is you start to see people in patterns. There are the regulars, same time, same sandwich, like clockwork. Then you've got the indecisive ones who squint at the menu like it's written in Sanskrit, the rude ones who treat you like a vending machine, the chatterboxes who won't shut up, and the mutes who won't say a word. You get used to it. You build a mental flowchart for how to handle each type. But then, every once in a while, someone comes in who doesn't fit any of the boxes. They don't act wrong exactly, just off. Like a song playing slightly out of tune. They leave you unsettled in a way that lingers, like the echo of something you almost heard. Last week I met one of those. I haven't felt normal since. It was a slow afternoon, one of those dead times between lunch and dinner when the world outside feels like it's holding its breath. Most people were still at work or too full to eat again. The store was quiet, just the faint hum of the refrigeration units and the occasional whoosh of traffic through the windows. I was wiping down the cutting board behind the counter. Sam, my coworker, was in the back prepping vegetables. We were the only two on shift. The door chimed. I glanced up, expecting to see a high schooler killing time or a construction guy grabbing a sandwich. Instead, in walked a man. Mid-40s, maybe older. Tall but slouched, with thinning gray hair and a narrow, almost bird-like face. His clothes were wrinkled, days old by the look of them, and his eyes were sunken, tired. But it wasn't his appearance that hit me. It was his expression, neutral but not peaceful. Something behind his eyes was disconnected, like he wasn't fully in the moment. He walked to the counter with stiff, mechanical steps and stopped under the sign that says, "Start your order." Here. He stood there staring at the menu like it offended him. After a beat, he looked straight at me. "I'll have a $5 footlong," he said. His voice was flat, not bored, emotionless. I hesitated. We don't have those anymore," I told him gently. His eyes snapped to mine. Sharper now, like I'd challenged him. "Yes, you do," he said. I shook my head. "No, sir. That deal ended a while ago." He stared at me, lips parted like he was trying to grasp what I'd just said. Then his jaw tightened. "The commercial said $5 footlongs." My patience was thinning, but I kept my tone even. "Sir, I don't know when you saw that ad, but it's been years. Prices have changed." Silence. His eyes twitched. His fingers started drumming on the counter in a slow, deliberate rhythm. Then, without warning, his voice spiked, loud and sharp. "This is bullshit." I flinched. He slammed his hand flat on the counter. "You people advertised this for years. I come in here, and now you're telling me it doesn't exist?" My heartbeat kicked up, but I forced my voice to stay calm. "I don't set the prices, sir. I just work here." He exhaled through his nose, hard. His nostrils flared. His hands clenched into fists, then released, then clenched again. And in that moment, I had a very real thought. This guy could come over the counter. I stepped back, just an inch, but enough. "Do you still want to order something?" I asked, my voice quieter now. He stared at me, jaw working like he was chewing on gravel. Then finally, after a long pause, he said, "How low are you willing to go?" I blinked. "What?" He tilted his head. "On the price. How low can you go?" At first, I thought he was joking. Then I saw his eyes. He wasn't. I stood up straighter, trying to steady myself. "Sir, this isn't a pawn shop. The prices are set." His eyes narrowed. Something flickered behind them. Something unreadable and very, very wrong. Then, in a low, bitter voice, he muttered, "You should be fired for this." That was it. That was the moment something in me snapped, quietly, like a wire pulled too tight. "Sir," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "you need to leave." His lips curled into a smirk. "Or what?" I reached beneath the counter, hand closing around the phone. "Or I call the cops." His whole face twisted, eyebrows pulled low, jaw clenched, something wild flickering in his eyes. His breathing changed, got heavier. His chest rose and fell too fast, like he was trying not to explode. Then he leaned in, close enough for me to smell the stale coffee and sweat on him. And in a voice like the scrape of gravel, he whispered, "I'll be back for you." Then he turned and stormed out, shoving the door so hard it slammed into the frame with a jarring bang that echoed through the empty store. I just stood there, frozen. My heart was pounding so hard, it felt like it might crack my ribs. A few seconds later, Sam came out from the back, drying his hands on a towel. What the hell was that about? I shook my head slowly. I don't know, but I really didn't like it. The rest of the shift went by in a blur. The dinner crowd came and went. Regular people with regular appetites talking about their days and ordering meatball marinaras like nothing had happened. I went through the motions, smiling, assembling, ringing up, thanking, but my stomach was tight the whole time. By 9 p.m., the store had emptied out. Sam had clocked out early, and since we weren't a 24-hour location, it was my job to close up. I followed my usual routine, wiping down the counters, restocking the veggie trays, checking the bread racks for the morning shift. Finally, I walked to the front door and flipped the sign to closed. I reached for the lock. The handle rattled. I froze. Outside, under the weak yellow glow of the parking lot lights, stood him. Same clothes, same hollow stare. He wasn't hiding. He just stood there, eyes locked onto mine through the glass, face completely blank. Then he tried the handle again. Harder. I backed away, breath catching in my throat. He wasn't yelling this time. He wasn't saying anything. He was just there, waiting. My fingers fumbled for my phone, finally unlocking it with shaking hands. I dialed 911. The operator picked up quickly, her voice calm and practiced. 911, what's your emergency? There's a man outside my store, I said, voice trembling. He threatened me earlier. He's back now. He won't leave. She stayed on the line with me, asking questions, telling me to stay safe and not confront him. I crouched behind the counter, peeking out every few seconds. He didn't go away. He just paced. Back and forth in front of the windows, slowly, deliberately, like he was waiting for something, waiting for me. My stomach twisted. I couldn't stop hearing his voice. I'll be back for you. Minutes dragged by. It felt like time had slowed to syrup. Then, finally, red and blue lights flickered across the parking lot. A patrol car pulled up. He didn't run. He just stood there as 2 officers approached him. They spoke to him, calm, measured, but I couldn't hear what was said. The man just gestured with his hands a little, then turned and walked away. No cuffs, no shouting, just disappeared into the dark. One of the officers came to the door and knocked. I let them in, my whole body still trembling. They asked for my statement. I told them everything, that he had snapped over a sandwich price, then threatened me. One of the officers, a younger guy with a buzz cut, frowned. "We've had complaints about someone like that. Same description. Doesn't do anything technically illegal, just shows up, hangs around, watches." I swallowed hard. "So, what now?" The officer sighed and pulled a card from his pocket. "We'll patrol the area for the next few nights, but if you see him again, call us immediately. Don't wait." I nodded and took the card with numb fingers. I haven't seen the man since that night. Maybe he's gone. But every time I close, I check the parking lot first, twice. Every time I step outside, I feel a presence. Not always strong, just a whisper of awareness, like I'm being observed. Maybe he's out there. Maybe he's not. But I know one thing for sure. He meant what he said. And one day, he might come back for me. Maybe not tonight. Maybe not next week. But the first time was never supposed to be the last. I saw him. Nothing about him stood out. Just another guy behind the counter at a Subway I stopped at a couple of times a week. I'm 26, live alone, and work long hours at a marketing agency in a mid-sized city. Most nights I'm too drained to cook, so I pick up something on my way home. Subway's quick, cheap, and close to the office. An easy fallback when I don't have the energy to think. The first time I noticed him was about 3 months ago. He was making sandwiches like everyone else. Long black hair tied in a low ponytail, wire-rimmed glasses, a little overweight, quiet. There was nothing unusual about him. He asked what I wanted, made my usual turkey sub, and handed it over without much small talk. Just another face in the rotation. But over time, that changed. At first, it was harmless, basic small talk. "Long day at work?" Or, "What do you do?" That sort of thing. I'd answer politely but briefly, just enough to not seem rude. Then came the shift. One night, as he wrapped up my sandwich, he tilted his head, smiled slightly, and said, "You always order the same thing. What if I surprise you next time?" I gave a tight laugh, brushing it off. "I like what I like," I said. Another time, as he handed over my drink, his fingers deliberately lingered against mine. He didn't pull back right away. His eyes locked on mine, and his smile widened. "You always smell really nice," he said. That one hit me wrong. After that, I avoided eye contact altogether. Then the comments got bolder, darker. "What kind of pajamas do you wear to bed?" he asked one night, voice low but clear. Another time, "I bet you taste as good as your sandwich." Then, "You should let me cook for you sometime. I can make more than just subs." I started dreading my stops there. Still, I talked myself out of making a big deal. Maybe I was overreacting. He was creepy, yeah, but not dangerous, not really. He didn't have my number, didn't know where I lived. It's not like he followed me or anything. Besides, it's just a sandwich shop. How bad could it get? Still, the next time I needed dinner, I convinced a coworker to come with me. Safety in numbers. That night, he barely spoke to me. Didn't look up. Just made my sandwich in silence and stared down at the counter. That should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. I decided to start going to a different Subway, one about 5 minutes out of my way. It was a small detour, but I figured it was worth the peace of mind. The first time I walked into the new location, I felt something I hadn't in weeks. Relief. New employees, new atmosphere, no more invasive comments or lingering stares. That peace lasted exactly 3 weeks. One evening, I pushed through the door, already thinking about what to order, when I looked up and saw him. He was behind the counter, same uniform, hair tied back, glasses perched on his nose like always. My stomach dropped. I froze. Maybe he picked up shifts at both stores, I told myself. Maybe it was just an unfortunate coincidence, but then he saw me, and his lips curled into a slow, deliberate smile. Missed me? I turned around and walked straight out. Didn't say a word. Just left. After that, I stopped going to Subway altogether. Cold turkey. Weeks passed. Life began to settle again, calmer, steadier. I almost managed to convince myself I'd overreacted, that maybe it hadn't been as bad as it felt. Maybe I'd imagined some of it. My brain wanted normalcy, and it was easy to go along with the illusion. Then one night, everything came crashing back. It was late, and I was half asleep in bed, aimlessly scrolling through Netflix. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I hesitated, thumb hovering over the screen, but curiosity won out. I answered. Hello? I asked. Nothing. Just silence. I waited a second, ready to hang up, when I heard it. Slow, heavy breathing, and then a whisper. Look outside. I sat up so fast the phone nearly slipped from my hand. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. I stared at the closed blinds covering my bedroom window, frozen. It had to be a prank, just someone screwing around. Then, tap, tap, tap. A soft, deliberate knock against the glass. I couldn't move. My body locked up like something primal inside me had flipped a switch. The air in the room felt suddenly colder, heavier. Then again, tap, tap. I forced my head to turn, inch by inch. A shadow, a face, long black hair. My stomach dropped like a stone. It was him. I launched myself out of bed and ran straight to the bathroom, slamming the door shut and locking it with trembling fingers. I fumbled for my phone, hands shaking so badly I almost dropped it. 911, what's your emergency? The operator asked. He's outside my window, I whispered, crouched near the bathtub. A man. He followed me. He's watching me. Stay on the line, the operator said. Officers are on their way. I pressed my ear to the door, barely breathing. Silence. Then, glass shattering. My front window. Oh God, I breathed. Panic rose like bile in my throat. I scanned the bathroom desperately. I needed something, anything. I grabbed a curling iron and a half-empty can of hairspray, gripping them like weapons. Footsteps. Slow. Heavy. He was inside. I could hear him breathing. Low, ragged, hungry. A door creaked open. My bedroom. He was in my bedroom. I pressed myself against the wall, fists clenched so tight my knuckles ached. Tears stung my eyes, but I fought them back. Then, bang, bang, bang. Police! Open up! Everything happened at once. A flurry of footsteps. A crash. Shouts. The sound of someone running. I threw open the bathroom door and rushed out just in time to see officers in my living room. They had him on the ground. Long black hair splayed across the carpet, his glasses knocked askew. His chest heaved in frantic gasps as they pinned him down. He turned his head. Our eyes met. And he smiled. Later, the police told me he had a knife tucked inside his jacket. But that wasn't all. They found a folded-up piece of paper in his pocket. A list. My name, my address, my work schedule. And scrawled at the bottom, in messy, obsessive handwriting, I just want a taste. I moved the next week. Changed my number. Wiped my life clean of anything he could trace. But sometimes, on the really quiet nights when I'm lying in bed and the world feels still, I swear I hear it. Tap, tap, tap. The smell of baking bread had seeped into everything. My clothes, my hair, even my skin. No matter how many times I scrubbed in the shower, I still came out smelling like yeast and deli meat. It was the summer after my freshman year at Ohio State, and like a lot of broke college kids, I needed a job. I ended up working at a Subway just off Route 57, tucked between a Sunoco station and a crumbling hair salon called Lily Styles. It wasn't glamorous, but it was easy work, and the pay was a couple bucks above minimum. Most evenings I worked with other students, kids like me killing time between semesters. We joked around, grumbled about customers, and made outlaw sandwiches when the boss wasn't watching. It could almost be fun. But one thing spoiled it. Randy. Randy was our manager. Mid-40s, thin hair combed over like it fooled anyone, and always doused in some harsh synthetic cologne that clung to your throat. He wasn't outright abusive, just off. The way he looked at me, like I was a snack instead of an employee. The way he'd always find a reason to brush past me in the narrow prep area, his hand grazing my arm or lower back. At first, it was just dumb comments. "You've got a smile that lights up this whole sad-ass place," or "You make that visor look sexy." I'd fake a laugh, shift the conversation, but then he started pushing. "You ever been to that steakhouse off the highway? Best ribs in the county, we should go. Just a drink sometime, nothing crazy. You'll have fun." I always said no, tried to keep it light, professional. But when we were alone, something in his tone changed. Less joking, more expectant. Like he didn't like being told no. Thankfully, I usually wasn't stuck with him solo. I made sure of that. But then one night, I let my guard down. It was a Thursday. I was scheduled from 6 p.m. to close with Sam, a laid-back philosophy major from Akron who never took anything too seriously. We vibed. I figured it'd be an easy shift. But when I walked in that evening, the store felt off. Dimmer, quieter. Behind the counter, Randy stood alone, arms crossed, grinning. "Hey, kiddo," he said. "Change of plans. Sam called in sick. Just you and me tonight." My stomach flipped. "Oh, okay," I said, forcing a smile that felt glued to my face. He smirked. "Don't sound so thrilled," he said, eyes dragging over me. "We'll have fun." I wanted to walk back out. God, I wanted to. But rent was due, and my account was sitting at $23. The dinner rush came and went. Those first few hours passed in a blur of toasted bread, bagged lettuce, and online orders. I barely had to speak to him. But by 9 p.m., the place emptied out. The only sounds were the low hum of the coolers and some soft pop song playing on repeat from the overhead speakers. That's when Randy started getting weird. He leaned against the counter, arms folded, watching me wipe down the tables like it was a show. "You work too hard," he said, voice slow and oily. I forced a laugh. "Someone's got to do it," I muttered, keeping my head down. He grinned wider. "You know, we don't have to clean everything right away. We could take a little break." I didn't answer, just kept scrubbing at a mustard stain that wasn't even there anymore. A few minutes later, I went to the back to wash my hands. The sink was tucked in the corner, near the walk-in freezer. It was always cold back there, but this time a different chill hit me, like the air shifted. I turned on the faucet and leaned forward, but I felt it. Someone behind me. Before I could spin around, Randy's reflection appeared in the stainless steel backsplash. Too close. Way too close. "Hey," he said softly. I stiffened. "Relax." His hands touched my shoulders. I jolted away. "Randy, what the hell?" He grabbed my wrist. I froze. My breath caught, and my heart slammed against my ribs. "Come on," he murmured. "Why are you always so tense around me? You don't have to be scared." "Let go," I snapped, tugging my arm. But he didn't. He moved closer instead, his breath hot against my neck. "Why do you keep pushing me away?" His voice cracked like he was hurt, but I could feel something darker beneath it. My throat closed. I opened my mouth to scream. Ding. The door chime. A customer. Randy jerked back instantly, like nothing had happened. "Duty calls," he whispered with a wink, and then he walked out chipper as ever, greeting someone with a bright "Welcome to Subway," like he hadn't just cornered me in the back. I stood there shaking. I needed to get out. Chapter 4. Escape. I didn't think. I didn't hesitate. While Randy was busy playing sandwich artist, I snatched my keys from my bag and slipped out the back door without a word. Didn't clock out, didn't say goodbye, just left. My hands were trembling so bad I could barely start the car. I drove straight home, every red light a nightmare, every shadow in the rearview mirror looking like him. I called my mom the second I walked in. Then I called corporate. Chapter 5. The Aftermath. The next morning my phone rang. It was the district manager, her voice tight with frustration. "Why didn't you tell us sooner?" I sat on the edge of my bed, blanket twisted around my fists. "I didn't think anyone would believe me," I whispered. She sighed, long and heavy. "You're not the first." My stomach dropped. She didn't give details. She didn't have to. From the tone in her voice I could tell. There were others. Other girls. Other nights. I never set foot in that subway again. I don't know what happened to Randy after that call. Don't care. But even now, years later, just the smell of bread and vinegar, it still makes my skin crawl. The sharp tang of freshly sliced onions mixed with the warmth of baked bread, clinging stubbornly to the cold air pumped in by the AC. The store had been silent for 20 minutes straight. No customers, no chatter, and the stillness had started to feel heavy, uneasy. I glanced up at the clock above the sandwich station, 9:47 p.m., 13 more minutes until closing. Ashley leaned against the counter, arms crossed over her apron. "Why does tonight feel like it's crawling?" "Because it is," I muttered, sweeping between the tables. "Feels like it's been 9-1 for an hour." She groaned, dragging a hand down her face. "At least we didn't get Mr. Extra Olives tonight. I swear he wants the whole damn bin dumped on his sandwich," I snorted. "Or the burnt toast lady, the one who wants it blacker than my soul." We both laughed, the kind of laughter that stretches just to break the monotony. Slow nights were weird like that, equal parts relief and unease. Less work, but the silence, it could eat away at you, especially when the place felt too still, like someone was watching, even when no one was around. I shook the thought off and focused on finishing up, sweeping faster now, picturing my couch and some dumb show at home. But as I neared the hallway to the restrooms, something caught my eye. The men's room door, slightly ajar, a thin slice of blackness peeking through the crack. My stomach tightened for no good reason. I frowned. I was almost certain it had been shut earlier. Curious, I nudged it open with the tip of the broom. That's when I saw him. A man sat slumped in the far corner of the bathroom, back pressed against the cold tile wall. At the sound of the door creaking, his head snapped up and our eyes locked. I froze. My breath caught halfway in my throat. I hadn't seen anyone enter the store. Definitely not him. Where the hell had he come from? His eyes were sunken and dark, as if sleep hadn't visited him in weeks. His face was hollow, almost skeletal. Greasy strands of black hair hung over his forehead, and the oversized jacket draped over his frame looked like it hadn't been washed or taken off in months. He didn't speak, didn't move, just stared. Seconds dragged. My brain stuttered, trying to catch up. Hey man," I managed, voice tight. "We're closed. You gotta leave." Nothing. No flicker of acknowledgement, no blink, no twitch. I shifted my grip on the broom, forcing myself to sound firm. "Did you hear me? We're closing. You can't stay in here." Still no response. Just those dead locked-on eyes, unblinking, watching. The longer he stared, the more it twisted my gut. He wasn't just ignoring me. It was like he was waiting for something. I took a cautious step back. "I need you to get up and leave now, okay?" This time he moved. Not to speak. Not to stand. Just shifted. Slowly. Hands bracing against the floor like he might rise. But he didn't. Not quite. I stepped back again. "Look, if you don't leave, I'm gonna have to call." The door slammed shut in my face. I stood there, heart pounding so loud I could feel it in my ears, just staring at the wood. Then I turned and walked, fast, back to the front. Ashley looked up from the counter, brow furrowing. "What's wrong?" "There's a guy in the men's room," I said, quieter than I meant to. "He won't leave." Her eyes narrowed. "A customer?" I don't know. I didn't see him come in, and he won't talk. He's just staring." Ashley tossed the cleaning rag aside. "Did you tell him we're closed?" "Yeah, he just slammed the door in my face." She stared down the hallway, her expression hardening. "Okay, screw that. We're calling the cops." I hesitated. Maybe he's just sick or homeless. "I don't care if he's the Pope," she snapped, already reaching for her phone. "If he's not leaving, I'm not sticking around to find out what happens next." I nodded, throat dry. "You're right." Ashley moved off to make the call, and I turned my gaze back to the hallway. My chest was tight, my hands clammy. Something about this didn't feel right. Not just off, Yori wrong. Then from the back of the store came the sharp, unmistakable sound of glass shattering. Ashley froze, phone halfway to her ear. What the hell was that? I didn't answer. I was already moving. I hit the hallway, just as the bathroom door creaked open again. He was still there, standing this time, facing me like he'd been waiting. Behind him, the mirror above the sink was shattered, splinters of glass still clinging to the frame, shards scattered across the floor. One large piece was missing, and then I saw it. His hand. Blood trickled down his fingers, dark red and gleaming in the fluorescent light. In his grip, clutched like a weapon, was a jagged piece of the mirror. He took a step toward me. That was all I needed. "Ashley, go! Get outside!" I heard her curse and rush for the door, phone still pressed to her ear. I bolted after her, lungs burning, heart thudding so violently it felt like it might rip through my chest. We burst through the exit and into the night, the cold air slapping us in the face. My hands fumbled for my keys. Ashley yanked open the passenger side, diving in as I slid behind the wheel and slammed the door shut. I locked them instantly. We sat there, breath ragged, eyes fixed on the front of the store. It looked normal, calm, peaceful, but we knew better. Ashley still had the phone to her ear. "Yeah, 911, we need officers at..." She stopped mid-sentence. Inside the store, near the counter, he was standing again, just watching us, still holding the shard of mirror in one bloody hand. Her voice trembled as she continued. "There's a man inside our store. He locked himself in the bathroom, broke a mirror, and now he's just staring at us." I couldn't look away. He didn't move, didn't pace, didn't try to leave, just stood there. His pale, bloodied face washed out under the harsh store lighting, the shard of mirror catching and reflecting the light in sharp flashes. Then slowly, almost like he wanted us to see, he raised his free hand, pressed his palm flat against the glass. Ashley's grip on her phone tightened. "He's got a weapon," Ashley whispered harshly into the phone. "Please hurry." I swallowed, my throat dry as dust. "How long did they say?" 10 minutes. 10 minutes. It didn't sound like much, until you were trapped in a car staring at a man like that. Then it might as well have been a lifetime. My keys lay cold in my lap. My instincts screamed at me to start the car, drive, run. But we couldn't. We were the only 2 employees on shift. Could we really just leave the store wide open? I glanced at Ashley. "Should we..." The man moved. Just a subtle shift of weight, but enough. Then he smiled. My stomach dropped like a stone. Ashley saw it too. Her hand shot out and gripped my arm, fingers digging in. "What the hell?" Then slowly, deliberately, he lifted the mirror shard to his lips and licked it. A slow, deliberate drag of his tongue along the jagged edge. Blood streaked across the glass, dark and wet, catching the light. I shivered. The cold crawled down my spine and settled in my bones. "Screw this," Ashley breathed. She dropped her phone into her lap and dug through her bag with trembling hands. A second later, she pulled out a small pink canister. Pepper spray. I hadn't even known she carried it. "If he comes out before the cops get here," she said, jaw clenched, "I'm not waiting to find out what he wants." I nodded, unable to force words past the tightness in my throat. Then the front door handle rattled. My keys nearly slid from my lap. Ashley gasped sharply, her fingers tightening around the spray. The man hadn't looked away. His eyes stayed locked on ours. One hand gripped the handle, testing it. Slow, casual, like he had all the time in the world. Thank God the door was locked, but that didn't make it feel any better. He paused, then raised his free hand and knocked. A gentle, deliberate tap. 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 I froze. Every muscle in my body locked. Ashley whispered, "What does he want?" I didn't answer. I didn't want to know. Then, without warning, he slammed his weight against the door. The glass rattled. The metal frame shuddered from the impact. Ashley screamed. I flinched so violently my head hit the headrest behind me. My heart pounded against my ribs like it wanted out. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles ached. He did it again. Then a third time. Crack. A hairline fracture spiderwebbed across the glass. Ashley scrambled to grab her phone. "Where are they? Where are the cops?" She barely got the words out when everything shifted. The man stopped. Mid-motion, frozen like a statue. Then he tilted his head, like he'd heard something only he could hear. And then, just like that, he turned, walked away, toward the back of the store. I blinked. What the hell? Ashley shook her head, eyes wide. Where is he going? We both turned, staring toward the alley side of the building. The employee entrance, the one we always use to take the trash out. "It's locked," I said. It had to be locked. Right? Click. My stomach dropped. That sound, the unmistakable, horrifyingly soft sound of a door unlocking. "No," Ashley breathed. "No, no, no." I didn't wait, didn't speak. I jammed the key into the ignition and turned. The engine roared to life. I slammed my foot on the gas. The tires screeched as we peeled out of the lot, the car lurching forward. My grip on the wheel was iron tight, breath coming in short, frantic gasps. "He had a key," Ashley muttered, shaking her head. Or maybe it wasn't locked. I didn't want to think about either. I just wanted away. We'd barely made it 2 blocks before the red and blue strobes lit up the night behind us. Ashley let out something between a sob and a laugh. Oh my God. Finally. I pulled over instantly. As soon as the first officer stepped out of the cruiser, I jumped from the car, hands raised, voice shaking. "He's inside. He's inside. The store." The officer's jaw tightened. "Stay in the vehicle." 2 more cruisers rolled in behind him. 3 officers advanced toward the store, hands hovering near their holsters. Ashley and I sat frozen, staring through the windshield. I bit down so hard on the inside of my cheek I tasted blood. Ashley's nails dug into her thigh. Her eyes didn't blink. "What if he's gone?" "I don't know," I whispered. "I don't want to know." A minute passed, then 2. A shout echoed from inside the store, then a crash, the sound of something heavy, someone struggling. And then they dragged him out. His jacket was torn, his hands still smeared with drying blood. But he wasn't fighting, wasn't yelling, he was smiling. That same sick smile. And just before they shoved him into the back of the cruiser, he turned his head and winked. They let us back inside about 30 minutes later. We had to finish closing. We went through the motions, but it was robotic. Half there. Every drawer we closed felt loud. Every footstep echoed. The mirror in the bathroom was a shattered ruin. Blood still smeared across the tile floor. He had been inside. Somehow. The police didn't say much. just that he had a record, that he wasn't supposed to be near businesses after hours, that he wasn't carrying any ID. I asked if he'd said anything. The officer hesitated, then leaned in, his voice low. He kept asking, "What time you close tomorrow?" I didn't quit right away, I should have. But I stayed, maybe because I needed to prove to myself it was over. Until a week later. It was late, and I went to take the trash out. Reached for the back door. It was already unlocked. I hadn't touched it. Hadn't even gone near it that night. I didn't wait, didn't investigate, I didn't want to know. I quit the next day, and ever since then I always check the doors. Twice. Because you never know who's waiting on the other side. Ethan pulled off the highway, every muscle in his back and legs stiff from the long drive. He'd been on the road for over 10 hours, halfway through a cross-country trip to visit his brother in California. Tonight's stop was Colorado, a pit stop he'd mapped out in advance. The town was small, barely a blip on the map, the kind of place most people glimpsed from the freeway and never thought of again. It was 9:45 p.m. when he pulled into a lot off the main strip, parking outside a quiet subway wedged between a dim gas station and a rundown laundromat. The open sign in the window blinked unevenly, its faint buzzing one of the few sounds breaking the stillness of the night. The parking lot was nearly deserted. Ethan hadn't expected much, just a sandwich before finding a cheap motel nearby. But the moment he walked in, something felt off. The only employee inside, a petite young woman, looked up sharply at the sound of the door chime. She couldn't have been more than 20, brown hair pulled back tightly beneath her green subway visor. She wore the usual uniform, but it was her face that gave Ethan pause, tight with unease, lips pressed into a line, her fingers nervously adjusting the brim of her cap. "Hey," she said, voice too bright to be genuine. "Welcome to Subway." "Hey," Ethan replied with a nod, stepping up to the counter. "Just a foot-long turkey on wheat, please." She began assembling the sandwich, but her focus wasn't steady. Her eyes kept flicking toward the front door, quick, darting glances like she was expecting someone. Not the casual glance of an employee waiting for more customers, but something sharper, more anxious. "You all right?" Ethan asked, tilting his head slightly. She froze for a split second, then gave a soft, nervous sigh. I'm just a little on edge. I'm working alone tonight, and there's this guy, he's been hanging around all day." Ethan's brow furrowed. "What kind of hanging around?" She cast another wary glance at the door before answering, voice lowered. "He keeps coming in. Says weird stuff. Then leaves. It's like, I don't know, like he's waiting for something, or watching me. Earlier he stood outside the window for like 10 minutes. Didn't even come in." Ethan felt a familiar tension rise in his chest. He'd done security work for a few years after high school, enough to recognize the warning signs. Young woman, alone, some guy circling like a vulture testing boundaries. She finished wrapping the sandwich and handed it over, her lip caught between her teeth. "I know it's a big ask, but could you maybe stick around? Just until I close up? It's only a few more minutes. Just in case." He didn't even need to think. "Yeah, I'll wait." She exhaled, the relief so obvious it almost hurt to see. "Thank you." "What's your name?" he asked, setting the sandwich on the counter and leaning slightly against it. "Maya," she said. "And you're Ethan, right?" He nodded. Maya moved to start wiping down the counters, her hands still trembling slightly, though she was clearly trying to hide it. "We close at 10. Shouldn't take long." Ethan stayed near the register, trying to ease the tension by making light conversation. Maya responded with soft laughs and short replies, but her gaze kept drifting to the glass storefront, her eyes scanning the lot outside every few seconds. The street was mostly still. Only a few cars filling up at the gas station, the occasional hum of tires rolling past. Then, at exactly 9:59 p.m., the door creaked open. A man stepped in. Ethan didn't need to ask. Maya's entire body stiffened, her breath catching audibly. "That's him," she whispered. The man looked to be in his 50s, grizzled and unkempt, with a scruffy beard and a stained dark jacket. He froze in the doorway like he hadn't expected anyone else to be there. His eyes flicked between Ethan and Maya, a quick, calculating glance. Then came a smile. Small, off-kilter. "You closing up soon?" he asked, his voice too casual. Maya didn't answer. Her whole body had gone rigid. Ethan didn't move, didn't take his eyes off the guy. "Yeah," he said flatly. "She is." The man's smile faltered. His eyes lingered on Ethan now, assessing. "You, heading out?" Ethan shook his head once. "No." A long silence stretched between them, thick with tension. The man's jaw twitched. "You should," he said, and there was something new in his voice. Hard, clipped, threatening. His stance shifted just slightly, like he was squaring off. Ethan stepped forward, voice calm but firm. "I think you should leave." The man's nostrils flared. He took a slow, deliberate step into the store, his eyes locking on Maya again. That was enough. Ethan reached out and grabbed his shoulder. What happened next was fast. The man swung wildly, his fist crashing into Ethan's chest with surprising force. Ethan staggered but didn't fall. Instead, he surged forward, tackling the man and slamming them both to the floor. The struggle was violent and chaotic. The man flailed beneath him, throwing punches with drunken fury. But Ethan had the weight advantage. He gritted his teeth and used every ounce of strength to pin him down. "Call the cops!" he shouted over his shoulder. Maya, shaking all over, scrambled for her phone behind the counter. The man's breath reeked of alcohol, hot and sour in Ethan's face. He was stronger than he looked. His knee drove into Ethan's ribs hard, making Ethan grunt in pain. But Ethan didn't let go. Seconds stretched, each one feeling like a full minute. Then, sirens. Flashing red and blue lights filled the windows. 2 patrol cars screeched into the lot. The second the front door burst open and officers stormed inside, the man went limp beneath Ethan like a switch had flipped. Ethan finally released him, panting hard, his muscles screaming in protest. The cops dragged the man up and wrestled him into handcuffs. One officer glanced at his ID. "Name's Alan Crow," he muttered. "Guy's got a record." Maya was still behind the counter, trembling. He's been here all day, harassing me. He wouldn't stop." One of the officers gave a grim nod. "Yeah, we've dealt with him before. 2 other women filed reports. Same pattern." Ethan's stomach turned. Maya stared at the officer, voice barely audible. "What happens now?" "We'll take him in. You'll need to file a statement, but don't worry. He's not coming back." Ethan finally let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. Outside, the man didn't resist as the officers shoved him into the back of the cruiser. He didn't say a word. Maya turned to Ethan, eyes wide and glossy. "Thank you." He gave her a quiet nod. "You okay?" She swallowed hard, steadied her breath, then nodded. "Yeah, just shaken." Ethan glanced toward the dark parking lot. "You want me to wait until you leave?" She hesitated, then gave a small nod. "Would you mind?" "Not at all." She locked up the store, her hands still shaky as she turned the key. Together, they walked out into the night. Maya climbed into her car. Ethan stood by his, watching until her headlights lit up the lot and she pulled out, turning onto the main road. Only when her taillights disappeared into the distance did he finally get into his own car. His ribs ached, and his body was buzzing with leftover adrenaline. As he pulled back onto the highway, he kept thinking about how close it had come to something far worse and how if he hadn't stopped that night, Maya might not have been so lucky.